All right, here we go. You are listening to the ESEE or Rat Pack podcast. I'm your host, Shane Adams, along with Patrick Rollins. Today we are joined by our favorite intrepid traveler, Reuben Bolieu. Welcome, Reuben.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Glad to have you. So this is just going to be kind of a Where's Waldo episode of kind of where we've been and what we've been doing, what you've been doing, really.
Yeah.
And then I'd like for us to work in a... we recently just had Mike's, what would you call it?
End of life celebration.
Celebration of life, yeah.
Celebration of life.
And work a few Mike Perrin stories in. We do plan on doing a, Jeff and Patrick and I and Bruce are going to sit down and tell a few Mike stories, but I know you've got some stories that might be made for public, acceptable for public consumption from the jungle from Mike. But before we get into that, why don't you tell us kind of where you've been? What's been going on since we last talked?
The last time I think I was down here with you guys doing this was in June. Late June.
Yeah.
And about 3 weeks later, I found my way to the Philippines, where I hadn't been there since.
Just found your way.
I just woke up one day. A lot of good stories start off that way.
Yeah.
But I was really due for an overseas trip just to get back to feeling like me again and doing what I like to do. And my first choice was Taiwan and Hong Kong, and they are still countries that have quarantine time. So, but really, I wanted to get back to some adventure stuff, jungle, and that's a place where I can get some good scenery in,
let your hair down,
food, and a little fun of the jungle. So
right.
Philippines have no quarantine time right now. Right. And if you're fully vaccinated and can prove it, you can come into the country. So to me, it was kind of a no-brainer to make that the first big international trip that I would do. And I was there for about a month. It was about a little more than 3 weeks. Got a chance to see a place I'd never been to with a whole lot of history, Palawan, and stayed there for a while, maybe 2 weeks. Got to camp in the jungle and see the marketplaces. Marketplaces are amazing in countries like that. If you ever want to know a little more about the people and what they eat, and you really just go to a wet marketplace will kind of tell all.
Give you the temperature.
Pretty much, yeah. What they eat and street food type stuff. So that's always fun, and that's always the best place to find tools, digging tools, cutting tools, all kinds of tools.
Extra coarse stones.
Yeah, they probably had them there. So I brought some bolos back and got one for Patrick, kind of a late birthday present. Oh yeah, it was a late birthday present.
Happy late birthday.
Like $7.
Let's not put a value on that.
It took a lot of effort to get it back, I'm sure.
Keystering it was not the easiest thing. Yeah. So I was really only there for about 2.5 weeks when Patrick gave me the news of Mike, and then I was only home for about 2 weeks before I came out here. So,
right.
Which is the nature of this trip now. Right. That's pretty much it. A whole lot of writing and taking pictures and nonsense.
So you recently did an article on our parent-child class.
That's right. Yeah.
Or at least, you didn't recently do it. It actually went to print recently.
Right. And it covered 2021. Was it spring and summer?
Yeah, I think so.
It was this year. Ooh, I don't know. Well, so I used photos and content from both classes, and I did one for American Outdoor Guide Boundless, which was an overview of the class, the curriculum, the things that, and I just happened to be around last year and this year for two of them. And so
that was this summer.
It was, right.
Yeah.
So American Outdoor Guide had me do just an overview of the class, some of the things, that Patrick was teaching the curriculum, and I was there, so I helped out. I always like to help out in classes when I'm around. And we're able to use photos from last year, some from the last one, and some of the same characters. So it was just an overview of the class, and then Knives Illustrated had me do more of the hands-on, the knife use part of it for the Knife magazine, obviously, and that was a lot of fun to put all these pictures together and just think of what we were doing and who cut themselves that time. And it's amazing because I think you'll agree, Patrick, in all those classes with all those people, parents, kids, there's very few people that actually cut themselves.
Yeah, that's for that class. The child has to have a parent or guardian.
Yeah,
constantly.
Sometimes they're the ones we're worried about.
Yeah, exactly.
More worried about the parents sometimes. But yeah, we've been real fortunate and not had any real bad mishaps. And
that's great. That's impressive because I don't know too many people that age I'd feel comfortable just giving a knife to and turning away from. But it says something about the knife safety part of the class, the school in general, because I feel it's very knife based.
It definitely is. Yeah.
Consider the company. But
certainly it's kind of a crawl, walk, run type deal as far as how we ease folks into that. And then normally in that class, instructors and cadre are bird dogging people. I mean, you can sometimes tell by just how somebody.
Yeah, you can see it right before it's going to happen.
No Band-Aid.
That's going to happen. Yeah, it's a thing. It's like watching a baby play in traffic. Sometimes watching students, and I don't mean just kids, but it's like watching a baby play in traffic when they're handling a knife, and sometimes you can tell something's going to go terribly wrong.
Given the amount of time that we spend in the field, and I don't want to jinx us, we are fairly fortunate in how we make not too many trips to the ER. I think our last trip to the ER was our safety officer, Anthony Pecoraro, for our surgeon.
Shout out to Anthony.
Shout out to Anthony. We're making you famous. But Anthony is our safety officer for RATSAR. You can visit ratsar.org if you want to know more about our nonprofit search and rescue team. But I think he made a little donation to the blood bank at bum camp there. But
we've only had one that sticks out that it was a rush to the ER, and then the kid had to have hand surgery.
Yeah.
In Idaho. Yeah.
I heard you tell that story.
Yeah. So I want to circle back around a little bit to the Philippines and ask, just getting there, was there any difference this time around? That's my dog.
Trip-wise, so I think since the whole lockdown, COVID, and how travel had turned into nothing for a while, dried up, and now I would say it's pretty much back. I was counting. I have flown on an airplane just a little bit over 20 times since then.
Oh, really?
And I mean, every time you stop and you have a layover, then you get on another plane, and all of that included just coming here, really, going to some of the shows, as you know. And this last trip I did, 37 hours one way and about 32 coming back, the whole trip. That was about 8 plane rides altogether. I traveled domestically in the country, just going to Palawan, so that was another 2 extra flights. And I've been one of 6 passengers on an airplane coming here the first time in March. When I say the first time, I mean the first time with COVID and everything that had changed, to being back to being super crammed in there, and no masks now. Okay. But when you're flying internationally, you have to have it. So it was really strange because I went to LAX airport from where I was on the East Coast, and no masks. Anybody in the airport or on the airplane going to LAX. I got to LAX, I had to go to the international terminal. From that point on, it was masks all the way, overseas. And so I mentioned that Philippines is one of the only countries that's open to just go to freely, except you still have to wear a mask on the street walking. And it's they really want you to. And if it's hanging off or it's just partially on, no one's going to give you trouble. They just want to see that you're trying. Making it look like you're attempting to be safe, but really it's they were really hard on their people there. You had to have I think it was the cloth mask, and then the
face
welding shield, and then it went down to them just kind of doing away with the big plastic, and now everybody's wearing a mask, and they've opened up their borders, and it's not any different than any other country where they still have their cases, and they still have
I'm sure like it is here. It's still regional. You go to one part of the country and you see a lot more masks than you do others and vice versa.
True. When I was in Palau, it seemed to be a little more relaxed, but then we went up more into the jungle to camp, and it didn't seem like anybody had it. Even in the little mini cab you were in, nobody was wearing it.
Yeah.
Didn't matter.
Yeah. I'm always kind of curious about how that is in other parts of not just the country, but the world as well.
What was your favorite food while you were there?
Oh, wow. I always loved this very red pork dish called tocino, and I kind of made it my mission to get as much tocino as I could, and as many different versions, and it seemed like every time I went to a place, they were out. Ordered it from the hotel.
Everybody else liked it too.
We're out. Yeah, I guess so. So I brought some marinade back on the packages and made some when I got home of boneless pork ribs, which aren't really the ribs. They call them country style ribs, but it's not really rib meat. And it's a little tougher. So when you cook it, you actually need to use some water to kind of boil it a little bit to tenderize.
Cook it down.
When it evaporates, then you go into the frying process. And it was a little tricky. It's the first time I had made it when I'd gotten back. So I like the tocino a lot. And then we used some of the marinade. I've been staying at Patrick's for a couple weeks here, and used some of the marinade to just make chicken skewers out of, and it works just fine. I should have brought you some. We had 2 chicken legs left over from about 6 or 7 days ago. That was my favorite food, yeah. And then barbecue, something you can always get, I would say, on most corners, but you can. I didn't have any lechon this time, but chicken skewer barbecue is what they do well. It's mostly pork, but pork and chicken. That, to me, going to the Philippines is, first of all, they're a blade culture. You won't go more than a few hours walking around not seeing somebody with a big old blade walking down the street, and it's just very normal. Going to work and coming back from work, people are just walking around town with it, and it's not like if somebody was walking around here with a big blade, it would look a little odd.
Right.
Not that. So I definitely like being around blade cultures in the world, and it also, to me, is a great food mecca for me.
Right.
I really enjoy the food. Do my best to emulate it when I do come back and make some of that food. So it's hard to beat the scenery there. Yeah. Really, when I first went there, because 2 things. My friend showed me a picture of him and his partner and these amazing green hills, and then it turned out to be the chocolate hills in Bohol, and one of the bolos, the big knives that we were chopping with yesterday was from there. The squared off looking one looks like a parang.
When you tricked me into chopping up a bunch of
yeah, it's not hard.
Try this one.
Here's 6 bolos. See which one chops better.
So there. What's the root of that culture as far as it being such a blade culture, do you think?
Wow.
Is it agricultural or is it?
Right, it is. And being a tropical country, it's very hard to do much without a long blade. And when I say long blade, they're all very, something about the 13-inch blade that seems to be reoccurring there. And, everything I measure seems to be 13 or above. And coconuts, right. A whole lot of coconuts, a lot of rice fields. It's just farmland, really. Right. And every bit of food that they consume, it's pretty much from there. So they're raising animals, they're butchering animals, and then they're going out into the field and making crafts, and you could really do it all with one big long blade, which is what they do. So it's just it's an education and a reward to be able to watch locals and see how they do it, how they're doing it the right way. We just try to copy it. And that's something I found out a very long time ago. My first few trips to Mexico and to Peru and Latin America, watching people and how they do it and how effortless it is, and
you can tell they've probably been using it since they were like 2.
Right. And I think there's always something to take away from that. And again, this past trip was nothing different. I was watching one of the guys who was he owned a little nipa hut that I was camping in one of the nights, and just watching him process wood and cut up bamboo was cool. I always take as much video as I can.
Right.
I have a lot of video from watching the locals in Peru, my first couple of trips there, and it's good to just revisit that and see how it's really done.
Well, that's what I'm really curious about personally, and kind of why I'm looking forward to, or hoping I can go to, I guess we have a trip on the books, the Jungle Trips in 23. I am an admitted small knife fan. I just tend to gravitate towards smaller knives. But I have seen large knives do some very delicate tasks in the hands of the right person.
That's it. It really is about the person using the tool.
So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to is and as I'm going to have to transition at some point, I guess, to
a man.
Well, that, yeah. I mean, actually, I'm transitioning,
surgery.
now. But not there's anything wrong with that. But I'm going to have to force myself to use a larger knife, because I generally shy away from them, because I most of the cutting tasks that we do is solely based on. I mean, you can do everything with a Swiss Army knife that we do for the most part.
I agree.
So I'm going to have to put myself again out of my comfort zone and get familiar with a large knife, and more importantly, not just a large knife, but mostly a large machete,
right,
of some sort.
Funny that you say you can do everything with a Swiss Army knife, because in a lot of these countries, their long blade, whatever it may be, is their Swiss Army knife.
That's their Swiss Army, exactly.
It's a it's a screwdriver, it's a digging tool.
Jorge process a chicken
in his hand, cut it all up. Probably even a paddle to whack kids if you need to, but no, they use it for everything, long blade. And you're right, but I will say this: unless you're going to be the trail man cutting a trail in the front, you can get away with not having a long blade just fine with a handful of skills and a good knife. You really could. It's the person who's in the front when we're cutting through the jungle, mostly secondary growth, that does all the chopping and cutting. And if you have a smaller blade, then you're obviously not going to be that guy, the point man. Or you can borrow one, pass one off. But for the most part, if you're in primary jungle, you just walk. Yeah. There's very little chopping.
Well, that's what Patrick said. I remember something that resonated with me.
Wide open.
Patrick was talking one time about taking our students down there, and they're just chopping everything.
Cutting everything inside.
And
that's what we signed up for.
Yeah, and then you look at the locals, and they're just taking the machete and just moving stuff out of they're not chopping anything. They're just, more than anything, just moving it around and working through the jungle versus, cutting a swath through it.
Well, have you seen some of the navigation courses that we do? And in 2007, we were just going right through just ugly brush, and you had to. You kind of had to. Yeah. Or you find a reason to. And in 2007, we were able to get into some primary jungle that was nice. It was just like you just showed up in some place that was, it's magical. You could just walk. And
I've never seen it. I've never been in primary.
It's different. And in the jungle that is kind of, I would say, protected and set aside in Subic Bay in the Philippines and the island of Luzon is primary jungle. There's a lot of secondary stuff in there, but their blades are shorter and thicker, and you're not really chopping a trail. I mean, there's a lot of bamboo that falls in and caves in as it does, and you chop through that. But for the most part, you're just walking, and you're using it as not so much a trail cutter, but a tool around camp.
Is Jest in Subic Bay?
Yeah, it is. It's right there on the water. It's up in the mountains, in the hill. There's Subic Bay is just a really big bay, and just the mountains above it is where the Jest camp is, and a lot of beautiful jungle there.
I wouldn't know.
It's a sore subject, and there's a shortage of bamboo there to cook in. You actually have to. It's an interesting course, but you get the bamboo from one part of the jungle, and you kind of are herking it, dragging it to where you're going to camp. So you're already walking the jungle and watching out for sharp bamboo, and there are quite a few cobras there. And then you're carrying all this bamboo just so you could make crafts with, and plates and fire and cooking. It's not just completely full of bamboo. There, like any forest, you'll have a certain type of tree in this area, a certain type of wild edibles and plants in one area. It's no different, but it is primary jungle because it's been preserved. A lot of training goes on there, and these trees are just massive at the base, and some of them they'll point out are 300 years old. That's what they say.
Now, Jest is they're a training,
right? Jungle environment survival training.
So Jest,
right? We're talking about. They have a long history with training Americans before they entered the war in Vietnam, and I guess that's the closest terrain, and so a lot of the local people that live there in that part of the jungle, they call them the Aitas. They have a way of living and hunting and certain skills that would transfer over to Vietnam that they were teaching basically the soldiers. And I didn't want to say survival because they're just living. That's just their way of life.
Them. Yeah.
Right. And some traps that were probably meant for maybe larger animals, deadfalls, that would transfer over to, I would say, something they could use when they get over there and are fighting this terrible war. So that is where the school started, just training. And to this day, they still teach. Wow, they teach all the branches of the military in the Philippines, and in the U.S. they have a training once a year or maybe twice a year for the SEER school. So it is full of Air Force, Army, all different branches. Maybe not the Space Force. I don't think they train them, but they all go through there at one point. I was hiking one time in 2016, and I was doing 3 days there overnight, and one really high pass, beautiful view. They were pointing out to me that's where the Navy SEALs will helicopter over and start to rappel down, and they rappel in, and then their training starts from there. And these people have just amazing skills, and they have no language barrier. They all speak English, and they're able to relate so much great information to not just Americans. I do believe Canada goes there sometimes, and they do get European soldiers coming over there from time to time. But it went from the purpose was to train Americans before they get shipped over to Vietnam, and it stayed open as a school for demos. A day, you can go for a day and just watch them making fire and making rice containers. And
can anybody train with these guys?
Yeah, anybody can, really. And the thing is, it's a very interesting place in the jungle. And you go there to the facility. There's a restaurant, and they make stuff like you would have it in the jungle. So you could have real food, something that they would prepare in the jungle. It's not like I don't know if they even have an oven or anything, a real stovetop. But
so their instructors are probably like third generation by now.
Right. And some of the very, very old men that are still there walking around, every now and then, somebody will point them out and say, "Oh, they're one of the."
That's like the Morris Kahansky of the jungle.
One of the OGs.
Sure, right. One of the OGs, and even the ones that are, like you said, third generation now, they're still ITIS, and it may be just a small percentage. You could see it, and the skill definitely has passed over to them. But when you go to the Jest facility for the training, it's strange. But if you've been to countries like the Philippines, it's not so strange. You go there, and it's almost like a menu of, you can go to the bird park part of it, you can go zip line, and if you wanted to go into the jungle and see jungle skills, they'll have quite a few instructors on call or on staff that are just there hanging around, and they'll take you for a day out, show you what they do, or they'll do demos under their awning where they keep all the bamboo very, very dry. and they can show you their bamboo fire saw inverted. They do the inverted bamboo fire saw. Some of the older guys that I've seen do the actual bamboo fire saw, where you're moving one piece with one hand as opposed to two hands on a piece of bamboo. They call it the inverted. And
that's what isn't that what Tom Hanks did? Fire plow.
The fire plow.
Oh, plow. Yeah.
That was
I've only ever done the two hands.
Me too.
Either propped, one end on the ground, holding it with your body, or like you see in the old military survival manuals where it's staked down. And that piece is stationary.
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah. That's it. And they'll do that. But if you want to do a little more training and stay overnight or stay a couple of nights, they have a few programs. One of them, the one that I've taken a couple of times, is their hunter-gatherer, where you are allowed a long blade. You could take a hammock, a tarp, and no cooking vessels, because there's a lot of bamboo. We'll get into bamboo forests, and we'll use that for containers. And 1 kilo of rice. So, and believe me, you will eat well. There's lots of frogs and crabs in the creeks. And
but bats, didn't y'all get fun?
We got some bats, right? And there are cobras there. They don't like to mess with the snake, with the cobra. But if they ever did,
I can relate.
I wonder why.
Yeah, they're not snake charmers or anything. They will only eat like the middle section. They won't eat the tail or the head, because to them, it being a venomous, poisonous snake, that's where
the stores are.
It's a safe place.
Yeah.
Although I've had rattlesnakes several times and never even considered only having one section. But so we never ate snake there. But what is there? What's left? They don't have a lot of big game. It's been completely hunted out, really. So,
wow.
So first of all, the water you can easily drink, and don't have to worry too much about a lot of animals defecating in it. If anybody's ever seen any nature programs and you see animals at the watering hole, they're taking it in one end and
putting it out the other.
Out. Yeah, and other thing. So water's safe to drink. It's pretty much frogs. You'll have frogs. You will have crabs. Lots of snails, and
you will eat crabs,
right? And either or, a lot of snails. So a lot of wild edibles, greens, a lot of greens, and some restaurants will even have some of the greens that you find. They call it wild spinach, and what you will find in the jungle. Some restaurants in town will serve as an appetizer, deep fried and battered, very good. Water spinach, I think, is what they call it. So there's a lot to eat in the jungle. I heard and read, so have we all, that it's impossible to starve in the jungle, and it's if you're willing to put up with some gag factor stuff, which is the biggest issue, right, for people that don't want to have something. I haven't had anything in the jungle that tasted bad, really.
And a lot of that's just mental, having to get over the fact that I'm eating a frog.
Sure. People will ask me constantly over the years, grub worms and things like that. What do they taste like? What do they taste like? I feel they taste like the aftertaste of nuts, like almonds and peanuts. And to me, earthy, woody, and not a bad taste. Some grub worms I've had, I don't know why, but a couple in Alabama I had taste like ink, but very few do. They're usually all the same taste, even if they're small. And I'm getting them in New Jersey from a birch tree. They don't have bad taste, nutty taste. So there's a lot. If you have a tool, you can eat. You can be okay. And something you may find out, Shane. If the trip does happen, and everybody goes, I would suggest play the game a little bit. I con Patrick into playing the game. He lost like 20 pounds in 2 days. But you'll see that there are a lot of things pointed out that could be potential food that maybe we'll pass on and you don't really need to have. One time we were there a few years back now in South America jungle, but the river was higher than it had been in 20 years, and it was a lot easier to just kind of reach up and grab certain animals like sloth. and it's there for the taking, and there's almost no effort involved, for people to get it.
So you're saying be opportunistic?
Just
so when you say play the game,
it.
let's delve in it. What does that mean?
Okay. So first time I ever went there, I was a student, so we went through all the same.
And your first time
phases.
was with Jeff and Mike, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it sure was. First time I'd met Mike and Jeff, and I'd only at that point spoken to Mike Perrin on the phone a couple of times. I think I called Jeff one time at the airport.
He didn't pick up, did he?
He did.
Oh really?
He hung up.
He did, and then he hung up right away. No, so yeah, the first time I was there was 2007, and playing the game. So I was a student, so it was just part of the trip. The course was to make your own shelters, and you'd go days without real substantial calories. There was a lot of rain, as you can imagine, rainforest would have.
Yeah.
And playing the game, basically, when Patrick went over, it was his first time to the jungle. It wasn't new to the survival game and the mentality. All that carries over. You bring that with you.
Learning how to suffer.
Yeah.
That's the only thing we're experts in.
Right. And
suffering.
And it's always easier when you're with a group of people. It has a whole different thing when you're by yourself. Like, I'm really suffering. I'm really in trouble. It's bad. But when you have a group of people there, you're set up for success.
I'm not as suffering as bad as that guy.
Right. I thought I had it bad. So playing the game, I would suggest to you to make a swamp bed. Go through the motion of making it and sleep in it, even if you throw a tarp over the top, and just get into some of those skills, and maybe take a day or two off of actual food, or eat what the students would eat, or partake in some of that, just to experience it for what it really is, and that is a jungle survival training trip.
Well, that would be my intention. Not that I would have a choice,
and you wouldn't
be real
have
honest.
to.
Like, I don't think I'm not going down there. I've said numerous times I don't really consider myself an instructor with what we do. So if I went down, it would be.
I'm gonna stay in the hotel, guys.
I'm on communications. I'm on the radio.
Here's a throwaway camera. Y'all take some pictures that I can post later. But no, I don't think I would have a choice, and I would want to as well. I wouldn't go down and not do that. Of course, I may regret saying that later. But
I said to you over chats, texting, that you'd be fine going there, and with the right company, and you'll always learn something. And I think I remember this very old video that Mike and Jeff did for Discovery Channel. I wish I can find it. We probably could find it. But it was them talking about the jungle being there. And I remember Mike Perrin, I'm not going to quote it precisely, but he said something about when you get into the jungle, there's a lot of these things that play on your fears, and it's really in your head. It's really not too different than being out in the forest here in Georgia. It really is.
Heights for me. Heights and confined space is like my own special hell.
Heights?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm afraid of heights.
I'm terrified.
It's the impact and the fall that scares me.
Yeah, it's the sudden stop at the end that's the problem.
Right, yeah, abrupt. So, yeah, I hate that too. You don't get too high over there.
Not a lot of
but just
elevation.
tapping into that fear.
Sure.
And for me, I'd like to use a phrase, check your dipstick. And at this point, given what Patrick and I do, used to be heights and confined space were a pretty significant dipstick check for me. But now I've kind of just been stress inoculated so much that I just and just that I'm not any less fearful of it. Yeah. I'm just more comfortable. But I tell people all the time, if it sounds like a Rage Against the Machine concert in my head whenever we're going through some of these super tight passes, and even on a time or two. I can remember being in Varnado. Is that 4-drop thing that we do?
Yeah.
There's a passageway that's really tight.
In caves?
Yes. And at one point, I can feel my anxiety level build. And at one point, I just turned my light off and just sat there for a minute and just had to breathe it in.
Silent.
Yeah, I just cried quietly to myself.
Yeah, I told David Walker, this is where we turn around.
Yeah.
Not gonna try that.
But it was that's I guess if I could have to think, but I had to just I was like, no, I'm just going to live in this uncomfortableness for a moment until I can find some peace with it. And for me, I guess not my fear, but my strongest concern for the jungle is I have sweet blood and I get eaten alive. Even we're sitting outside talking to Christian yesterday, and I'm slapping myself like I've, having fits. And he was like, what is wrong with you? He's like, are you not getting eaten alive by mosquitoes? And he was like, no.
They're not that bad down there, are they?
Nah.
I don't. No.
Yeah.
You'll be fine. Yeah. You'll be fine.
I was always that way. If we were ever in a tent or camped or hiked in the woods, I was always the one that just got completely eaten up by mosquitoes.
Yeah, that's me.
And when nobody else did. It's like for some reason it's me. So
sweet blood, that's what I
call that good training. That won't change when you're there. And what's so strange is when it rains, it seems like when it rains, that's when everything comes out even more. You think that things that fly they don't take a break.
Do you remember the Fisher Price, My First Bivvy?
Yeah.
That Mike,
they made you
that
sleep.
Mike hooked me up with.
That was part of his
so I had a
joke, I think.
My second trip down there, had a hammock with a mosquito net built in.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to be using that. And Mike said, I've got this bivvy I want you to try out. I want you to use it. We need to evaluate it. And that first night, get it set up, crawl in it.
Sucker.
And I realized I'm way too big
This
for
is really small.
So arms are touching the mosquito net, the netting, and you just got eaten alive.
Yeah.
And that's, left the hammock at Percy's. And so I was just stuck in that for the week.
Oh, wow.
And Mike just laughed and laughed.
Yeah, I hate sleeping on the ground in the jungle. I don't know if I ever have, come to think of it.
Jeff and Mike always did.
Yeah, I never liked the moisture that seeps through. And
dude, I have no desire to sleep on the ground in the jungle.
I'm a ground sleeper in the woods everywhere, as far as I can take it. Even just outside of the cabin there in Alabama, I'll camp on the ground, even when it's getting hot and muggy. And okay, but in that type of weather, the more convection you can get off the ground, any little bit of air helps. Yeah,
it's just plus everything in the jungle wants to eat you. Even the plant, everything wants to eat and kill you, from the plants to the insects to the animals. And
there are some grasses there that will cut you like a blade, and it's strange, but it will happen. You'll drop something in the grass, reach down, and then on the way out, you have some slices on it. I still have one from just a few weeks ago there in the jungle. I don't know what I was doing, but I walked by this blade of grass and I look, and it was like instant blood, and it was burning and itching. It's good to be back. You know what you
Some
get
of it
into.
feel like tiny little saw teeth.
Yeah, right.
Catches your clothes and stuff.
Yeah, it'll get you.
So take us back to some of those early trips and early experiences, because you've been around for a long time.
Are you saying I'm old?
Even before Patrick, you're young for your look. But
72, ladies.
Some of those experiences with Mike in the jungle, Jeff in the jungle.
Oh, wow, there's always a learning experience being on any of those trips, and from anybody that they're involved with, anybody that is there in the jungle, from the people manning the boat to guides, you're learning something just by watching how they do it. And it could just be some small little detail that'll click. Oh, wow, let's try it that way next time. So for me, it was a huge learning experience. I think much like Patrick, you understand at this time when the school had just started, there wasn't a lot of internet. There wasn't a lot of research you can do. I mostly saw ads through Tactical Knives magazine.
Which I think, did Jeff write for? No, Jeff wrote for SWAT.
He wrote for
Tactical Knives magazine.
American Survival Guide.
SWAT, all the. Yeah, I was reading him for several years before I ever had a chance to do a trip with him. So his knife reviews were the backstory was often in the jungle because they'd went so much. So when there was this thing called the internet, and then you can go on their website and see, it'd be like 14 to 16 pictures of their trip, and it just looked miserable, right? They did long trips. They did 14, 16-day trips, and I remember 11-day trips, and watching that. And you'll get some guys around sitting talking about how they want to go to the jungle. And I had friends that really would were maybe interested in doing a trip like that. And that year I'd done so many peaks in California and trips in Grand Canyon up and down and Mount Whitney. I just did a lot of the high peaks in Southern California, meeting all above 14,000, some below. And after that, my cousin was asking me, what are you going to do next? And I know I always wanted to go to the jungle. Movies and everything kind of set that up for me. And it was interesting because I remember calling one of the numbers from, I guess the website. And the first person I talked to was Mike Perrin. And we had a conversation about, this was middle of September, and they were leaving end of October for an early November trip in 2007. And he said, we got spots left. And he signed me up, and it was great. About a month later, I was playing a gig at Disneyland playing drums. Went straight from Disneyland Park to the airport to get on a plane to go meet these guys in Peru that I had been admiring, watching, looking at their trip photos for so long. It just felt like the thing to do. And no matter what kind of background experience or time you've spent anywhere in the wild, no one is ready to just go to the jungle for the first time. It's a leap of faith. It's not like I'm ready now. No, there were people that were on the trip that had never spent a night in the woods. Some people that just weren't hikers or outdoors people, but they wanted to do it, and they did just fine. They didn't come with bad habits or a lot of preconceived notions. They really just, they came to the trip to enjoy it, and everybody did just fine. We had one actual survival instructor there that was from Alaska, and he was cold most of the time.
Brian?
Well, it was one of Brian's guys. His name was Tuck, and they were all really good people. I like Tuck. So maybe your height, maybe a little taller, and probably
just wet all the time.
It was a lack of calories that it seemed like, just keeping his machine going. He was often with a poncho over him and cold. So on the boat, I actually get into talk to Mike and Jeff. I was just kind of maybe bothersome, asking them lots of questions about how do they do that swamp base. Oh, they're going to show you. And he was describing it. Because
do you ever shut up?
I didn't do anything with magazines at the time at all.
Right.
And
but you were active on forums there.
Sure
doing
was.
some stuff. Yeah.
I did a lot of backpacking trips and had a lot of gear that I would post pictures of. But it was I would just get a lot of bits of information from Mike, little tips on things that were good. I think one of them was, I still use today, I do think it was from Mike or Jeff, about hand sanitizer being, that's your bath. That's gonna be that one thing that kind of makes you feel clean or normal, or it does a lot for you and for fire, and especially for your feet,
physically and mentally.
It's like your little your whoopee. And it's talking about tidbits.
Yeah, hand sanitizer and time in the jungle with
little bits of information that you'll get here and there, and hopefully you remember them. And it was the first time I really got a chance to see Mike and Jeff play off each other, right. Being the team that they had been for several years.
Like and old married couple.
Yeah, and this was in 2007. And I think at that time when I went on that trip, I was one of 5 students, and they hadn't gone in a couple of years for some reason, maybe political. I forget why it was, but it was like their first time back in several years. So the old guides were back, Luis and his brother Percy. We saw him. He wasn't back, and it was a whole new world just before we even got into the jungle. Just being in the different countries for the layovers, we had about a day and a half in Lima before we even flew up north to the rainforest, to Iquitos, where the jungle is. So that alone was it was almost like it was slowly setting us up for this, because they had made sure that they booked the cheapest, crappiest La Casona was the name of the place. Sorry if anybody from La Casona is listening right now.
I doubt it.
You never know.
You'd be surprised. I actually went back there again several years later, and it was hard to find, and I stayed there just because, and it was weird. There isn't one room there that has a toilet seat on the actual toilet, and almost none of the toilets flush. So we were just kind of shedding that skin,
a gradual spiral,
getting down to basics, right? So it's an experience. Just anytime you go to another country, even going to another state could feel like you're in another country sometimes.
Yeah.
So those old days were great because we had a very slow boat that was 8 or 9 hours. So you're very far from primary care. But those long trips, everybody just talks, gets to know each other, and shares everything, which leads right into a good Mike Perrin story. So it's a team effort. It's what I've always liked about being involved with the people in the school from early on, is everything's a team effort. You're being set up for success. And part of that team effort is everything gets shared. So if you get on the little boat, then you have a candy bar that you bought with your money, and you're going to take a bite, and you need to pass it around. Everybody gets something, or at least it has to be offered to everybody. Even the guys working the boat, the boat crew guys, a couple of guys, if you have something to drink, everybody shares everything. You pass it on. It's not just yours. And it's just kind of a known thing that we're all going to share. We're all going to take a drink out of the same thing. So in doing that, Mike would enjoy. I don't know if he bought the candy bars there. He had wrappers. He had Snicker wrappers and candy bar wrappers, and he would like to get up really early or maybe late. He'd come out. I don't know his method, but he would make sure to throw some of these candy bar wrappers around under people's swamp bed just to get a little tension going. People looking at each other like, I thought we're not supposed to hold out. and if nobody really addressed it, because it made it real awkward, which add to the comedy, then Mike would maybe pick it up and go, you guys see that? And it was funny to watch. That was one of his gags that I always liked. So comedy in the jungle, you got to have it, because everyone's suffering to some degree. Some people will be real vocal about it, and some people won't, but everybody's going through something that's uncomfortable. For me, I absolutely hate going to sleep wet, and I hate the heat and the humidity. And people wonder, what? You like the jungle. When you get there, you're able to turn certain things off and certain things on, right? So, but for me, it was the one of the things that always irked me about the jungle was laying there wet and super hot and trying to get comfortable enough to sleep.
Just feel like you're stewing in your own juices.
Trying to doze off while you're sweating.
Yeah, it's like you're basically steaming. Yeah, that was always weird and uncomfortable. What about for you? What was uncomfortable about?
The first trip when I went down and having to play the game, thing I had an issue with was I was chugging water, a 3-liter Camelback, and just constantly filtering, constantly chugging water, but nothing else coming in.
Yeah.
Probably got into a little bit of hyponatremia.
Yeah, I think you did that first time.
There's no salts, no electrolytes, nothing coming in, and you feel like you're dehydrated. So you're just constantly trying to chug water, and then your body's not absorbing it as fast as you're taking it in. So then the vomiting comes, and it was just like a downward spiral.
Sure.
And, that was probably the roughest for me. I think it was day 3. Jeff hooked me up with some, oral rehydration salts. Mixed it up, sipped on that, and was fine. The rest of the trip.
Yeah, fish soup would also be something that they would give to people when they got really dehydrated and just looked like they just couldn't do another day, or even you start to see people swinging like they really don't have any business holding a cutting tool.
Yeah.
Sometimes I remember on the trip I was on, 2007, a guy, Cody Kwok, if you're listening, good guy, just got really dehydrated and kind of weak, and they took him out of the game, put him on the boat, which is a bit of a safety net, because and it's good to have that when we're training. We're not trying to kill ourselves over there. So they would just take him out of whatever he was doing, put him on the boat, the little boat, and have some fish soup always kind of ready going. And
put him on the boat with Luis, and Cody's like, "No, I'm ready to go back in the jungle."
no, I'm not. Can I leave the boat now?
But that's something a lot of people don't realize is that there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes when we go to plan a class. You know, we did a scouting trip for a Utah class in the Grand Staircase in Escalante in that area several years ago, and we were going to do a point-to-point class where we're going to be backpacking and you know, we had to go scout. I mean, it's a cool trip because we get to go, you know, and just it's nice to go kind of unencumbered with worrying about other people. But when you're teaching the class, then we're always you know,
stress levels. What?
Yeah.
Sure.
So me and Patrick and Jeff and I think Wendy was on that trip too.
Yeah.
And we were able to go on this really cool multi-day hike and seeing some beautiful terrain that we're not accustomed to because it's not the Southeast, and that's one of the things we're doing is we're looking for extraction points and building a safety plan as far as if we're here, then we need to get out here and here's how we're going to do this. Yeah. And you know, we want people to feel like they are on their own. I mean, I guess we're tipping our hand, showing our hand here a little bit, but we still have to make those plans in place so that we can get people out. We know what the closest hospital is. We know what that hospital's capabilities are, and if we have to have a trauma center or something else. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, it sure is.
We did all that work, scouting and planning that one, and nobody signed up. We still had fun.
Yeah. That's important. That's one thing I always notice about doing any of these trips with Mike and Jeff, whether it be overseas or even in Fort Payne, way back when they started doing the trips. It was always, you're going to have a good time, first of all, no matter what. You're going to have lasting memories and laugh, and then there's some training involved too.
Yeah.
But mostly it was always just a fun trip to be around those wise guys, and everybody associated with them had something to offer, either on the comical side or just skills wise.
Man, that's the real hidden gem in all this is, and I think that's one of the things where I finally felt like I'd found my people when I came here is I hate the fact that I didn't get to spend that time with Jeff and Mike in the jungle. And by the time I came here, I wasn't really, Mike had kind of started to stay up in Tennessee a little more, not come down for classes as much. So
or trade shows as much.
So I got to spend time with him at trade shows and then on a few classes that he would do. So, but Mike was always a prankster and a card.
Oh yeah.
And that was the things I always enjoyed about him most. But just having that, the ability to rip on each other and to make fun of each other.
Speaking of,
especially when things are bad, you know.
Yeah, sure.
So
then things would be sometimes.
Yeah.
Do you remember the trip with the two British guys?
Yeah.
And Mike told them need to have a fire by what's tea time?
High tea.
2 o'clock, 4 o'clock.
Who knows?
But he told them, he said, you need to have a
question.
good fire ready. It needs to be good enough to be able to boil water at this time, whatever tea time is.
Yeah.
And Mike walked off. And then sure enough, they got a fire going.
Yeah.
And I think he said you need to have a pot boiling.
Right.
And then when he came back, he had taken 2 little tea bags from somewhere, the airport or whatever, and gave them to him. And they had afternoon tea.
Which he had to have thought of way before.
Well in advance.
This is going to be funny.
We got 2 British guys
in a
here.
week or something. Yeah, that was kind of fun. Just little stuff like that keep everybody going. That kind of laughter is so necessary on a really on a tough trip.
Such a mood lifter.
It is, yeah. It really is. I do 90% of things in the woods by myself these days. It seems like it, and it's different when you're with somebody else. Or I remember all the trips, countless trips we've all been someplace where we've hiked into and slept. It could be in the woods. It could be in the jungle, and just remember a lot of fun times and laughter and Mike singing and doing that bit about his dog. I got a couple of videos of that are really funny.
You need to play one.
we should have had an audio queued up ready to go. But those little things end up being the biggest when you think about it. Those are the things I remember more than what kind of fire we made or how we built the shelters. Just those times that are really fun. But yeah, it was a good time learning from those guys, and yeah. So that's another Mike story that was funny. We talk about all the time is. First time I was there, we're building shelters, and if you've ever been around 5 guys building a swamp bed, it does look like some kind of POW camp. And I remember him walking around, just first of all
critiquing everybody's stuff,
telling us how we're doing it wrong, cracking up, and saying that line, "Be happy in your work." And he kept saying that. Like, what is this? He's like, "You never seen that movie? You don't know where that's from?" No. So. At the time, my grandfather was still, he had a stroke, and I wouldn't say was recovering, but he was bedridden, and they had known about it because we had talked about it. And Mike saying, "Well, I'm going to send you this movie since you've seen it, and you watch it with your grandfather." And he did. He sent me the Bridge over River Kwai, and it was VHS. He sent me VHS, and luckily we still had a VCR, and we watched it, and sure enough. Yeah, that line came up, so that's always one of us will always say it a few times
every class
during the class.
He was a massive he was a huge movie buff.
Yeah, as long as it had a good ending.
A bad ending. If he didn't like the movie or if it had a bad ending, he would send them all to me.
Yeah, Patrick
get a box.
Patrick got all his cast off DVDs and stuff.
And now he brought it to you. It's in the truck.
yeah.
Pay it forward.
Well, we'll transition. I know you guys had some critiques of the Pinhoti.
It's time to talk trash.
And so I'm here for the.
So part of being in the designer's corner.
Let's talk. What is the designer's corner?
First of all, we'd like to publicly welcome you to the designer's corner.
Thank you.
Tell the story.
Finally.
How that came about.
Jeez, I think you tell it better.
It was you. Who all was over there?
I'm sure Jeff and Mike were in on it. Probably
Lee?
James.
I think Lee Smith.
Was it already that?
Yeah.
I thought it was a little before that.
I think the tertiary was out. And I came walking over,
right.
The Blade Show.
One of the shows.
I came walking over, and he timed it perfectly. He's like, "P, this is designer's corner only. You can't come over here."
It's a designer's meeting here. You're not part of this.
So ever since then, a lot of jokes about the designer's corner.
Designer's corner. And actually, yesterday, the day before, at Mike's thing, we actually had quite a lineup of designers there.
We did.
Well, we had.
I felt. I was
going to ask you to leave, but I thought, no, it's out now. So
yeah, I've been asked to leave before. Yeah, I can remember. No, we're having a designers meeting.
Again.
I was in the presence of giants on that.
We had James Gibson and
Expat.
We had Expat,
infamous Expat,
Roger,
which we do plan on. We're going to have a
Cristobal Campos.
He's going to. I told him he's going to have a coming out party. We're gonna out Expat at some point.
People are going to be so disappointed.
Yeah.
His designs, they practically happen in his sleep. They design themselves.
Automatic. Yeah.
Like many of my articles. Yeah, but it was great to look up and just see. Okay, we got the 3 of us here. There's James, there's Roger, Chris, and
then there's me with this turd.
There was Jeff there, and I don't know who else. I guess that was it. The only person we were missing was Cody, I guess, as far as the
and Lee.
Camp War series. And Lee, right. So, yeah, Shane, you excited about your knife?
I am.
Well, that makes one of us.
That's
kind of stuff we do in the designer's corner.
Yeah. It has the distinction currently of being the most exclusive ESEE ever made. We are still, for those of you that are listening, and to the 12 of you that have pre-bought them from places, we're still working on getting that primary shipment out to dealers, and stand by.
That's cool. I got the 0000 in my hand.
Yeah.
I've had the Hest folder, the one that Sean Rowan was making when it first came to be 0000. I still have it.
Yeah.
I think I might have another one that's 0000. That might be was fortunate enough on these trips. We're always fortunate enough to have the first of something when it comes out, like the Kangaroo, the first Azula. We didn't even have a sheath for it in 2008, and I had a machete sheath made, which is very rare to have a sheath for a machete. But I had a little Kydex fold over bit, and it by friction it just fit right in there. So that's all the only sheath we had. So I think it's either the Azula or the Kangaroo that I have a 0000 number.
I want to say I think you have the Kangaroo that's like maybe.
We got the first couple in 2011, the triplet resin. But yeah, I know you did a whole podcast already on the knife, and got one in my hand right now, everybody. You can reach me at.
Yeah. I want to hawk this one on eBay.
Well, there's somebody that we've already, busted scammers on our own post trying to. It's like, we have them in stock. It was like, that's not possible. I know better.
No, let them have their moment.
I was like, what number do you have? He's like, I've got number 124, and I was like, no, you don't.
What did he ever say? You got me. Did he ever?
No, he just blocked me.
They rarely do. Yeah,
really? Yeah. But that was after we'd already pretty much outed him.
You're ruining my scam.
Yeah, he was based out of Cameroon. And the funny part about it is I did a post on this, and the first person he tried to sell one to was my wife.
That's funny.
And I was like, well, this guy's obviously...
Like, I'm not going to buy this trash.
Yeah. And so I had her reach out to him, and he was like, yes, send me $200 Venmo, and I'll send you the one I have in stock. Right. And I was like, ask him which number it is. Ask him for a picture. And so
send you one of your own pictures.
Yeah, he sent me one of the pictures that I took, which I thought was pretty funny. And then I reached out to him as ESEE, and I was like, "Hey, man, thanks for selling our knives. I've got some people that are interested." He's like, "Yeah, it wasn't to my liking. Like, I get that." I was like, "Cool, okay." I was like, "Can you send me some photos of it? Because I've got some collectors." And this guy just like dumb. Once again, sent me another photo. It's like, hey, I know, I said, I would like a photo of the actual knife. He's like, this is a photo of the actual knife. I said, no, it's not. I have that knife. It's sitting, sitting, I don't know, somewhere right now. At this point, that knife's sitting on the table somewhere. Because these are the only two in existence that I'm aware of right now, because we're still waiting to sit in there.
That's the production final.
That right? Is the final, yeah. So that's the first production. Yeah, that's the best we could do. That's our best effort.
Nah, it'll be fine.
So,
yeah, you gonna take that on your first trip to the jungle?
Yeah, I'd consider it. I mean,
there's always a place for a small.
If I did, I would also. I mean, you're gonna have a big knife anyway, so
sure.
I'm gonna be in the back and make sure, like, everybody's gonna have like all the possible snake bites and other stuff. I'm just gonna be following the drove.
Don't be the third guy in line.
I'll run sweep. That's where I normally line up anyway, is on the sweep side of things, so I can keep an eye on everybody.
When you get that many people moving through any forest, you're lucky to see any type of wildlife. And if you're by yourself, you'd be more likely to run into something.
I've only seen one snake down there that I saw, that wasn't one that Percy caught or got from the pet store.
Pet shop, yeah.
But like you said, that many people moving around, they feel the vibrations and everything.
Yeah, you're lucky to see anything. We saw fer-de-lance one time, but we weren't hiking. We were on the water for 9 hours, and it was dark. We didn't get to where we wanted to get to, so we just pulled over. Everybody got off the boat and took maybe 2-3 steps, and there's a fer-de-lance right there.
Ugh.
And they got rid of it, dispatched it, and said, "Where there's one, there's more.
Just so you
Make camp. Good night."
See you in the morning.
And everybody had tents and put them down. I didn't have a tent. I had a hammock, so I just stayed. I strung my hammock on the boat across, and it was safe. But you won't really see a lot of snakes. You'd be surprised.
If you hear somebody scream like a girl, that would be me.
Lucky person.
He found one.
So what's next for Reuben? Let's wrap up with this. Where we're heading? Where are you heading? What you doing that you can
probably
talk about?
To cook something over a grill at Patrick's. And
okay.
Next, not that. I'm just looking forward to this cooler weather. Fall is a great time to be outdoors. The colors, the weather. getting ready for that winter. I just love the cold, camping. No bugs. Don't like the heat, so it suits me just fine. What's next? A lot of gear testing, a lot of reviews and articles.
Now you're staying stateside. You're not traveling quite as much on your day job.
Yeah,
and doing a lot of riding. Who are you writing for?
Ooh, everybody now. Well, not anymore. They all fired me, but I started to. Currently, I would say I'm the most active with Knives Illustrated, American Outdoor Guide Boundless, which is online now, Ballistic Magazine, and American Frontiersman. Lucky to do something in every issue so far, and shoot a few good photos that they would use as a cover sometimes. So that's challenging, to treat it like a day job and really put aside 6 to 8 hours a day just on the writing, research, photos.
Just watching you at the house, I'm like, man, you gotta have some self-discipline.
It is like
300 more words. God, I gotta come up with 300 more words.
A lot of profanity.
Yeah. Screw fishing.
I hate you. And writing PRs for some companies, pretty cool companies like Fisher Space Pen and Warthog Sharpener, just doing product research and really getting into. So here's we'll end with, we don't have to end with it, but something Jeff told me a long time ago about, I know you're big into photography, that the first trip I ever did, again, I wasn't into any magazine stuff at the time, but Jeff was. And I remember one of the things he said was, shoot everything, take a picture of everything. You never know when you're going to need it, or a friend, a fellow writer or something. I wasn't at all in the business at the time. I was just a student. I was there for the love of it. And it's amazing how I find myself going back to folders from 2010, 2017, because I know, on that trip I took a picture like this, and just that little bit of information, like shoot everything. You never know when you're going to use it. It was some of the best advice in the business I could have ever had.
I treat my pictures like it's very important. And I like you, I can't. And it's funny, we take thousands of pictures.
Right.
I mean, like, I might take thousands of pictures in a month.
Yeah.
Shoot as many as you can, and maybe one of them will be good.
Yeah,
you only need one good one.
That's the only difference between a pro and an amateur. Is you only see the good ones from the pros.
Right.
But honestly, it's amazing what you can remember. Where you like, I have this video catalog of like, boom, I gotta now. I gotta find it.
Yeah. And it only gets harder as the years go on.
And I'm adding so much video. And so luckily SSD drives have come way down in price, but I'm filling up 2 terabytes a year easily, and more now that I'm doing more, because I archive all of our video too. And man, my poor MacBook is just like breathing hard most of the time. And you start trying to transfer just with this podcast or something in video. I mean, you're talking about 60 to 100 gigs of
easily
video and audio every time you're doing one of these things.
And in your guys' position, any picture you take from training or rescue or anything could potentially be on a package or in a catalog, on a website.
So, I've got pictures that I've been holding on to of the prototype and these things for 3 years at this point, Right. And so he's like, God, I took that picture. Now I got to go dig through it. And then, I mean, we can choke down a phone pretty quick, and certainly a computer. So I'm in a constant state of shuffling data around.
Sure.
So, RB, Patrick, tickled y'all are here. I hate that we have you here under these circumstances, but I know that kind of as a closing, what an awesome ceremony and what an awesome testament to Mike's life and his impact on people.
What a legend.
And so to be able to have those memories, I'm envious of both of you to have those memories of Mike, but unfortunately I guess I'll have to settle with you two and Jeff.
Consolation prize.
But so for those of you that are listening, thanks for following us. We've been a little delinquent on getting stuff out. We've just been kind of busy and juggling some things, but we've got this podcast and another one with James I have to edit and get done. That's pretty good. Well, it's decent. It's a good effort for us.
Good as it could.
So, hey, we appreciate what y'all do. Thanks, and y'all take care.